Going to do something a bit different with this video, in addition to it being a Wednesday upload instead of Friday. Forgive me, oh great algorithm, there will be a Friday video as well. I thought we'd take a quick run through the 4 current LMDh/GTP vehicles, now that they all have 5-minute guides, and rank them based on their aesthetics. While that makes this, therefore, entirely an opinion piece, I do have a few distinct categories that I will be focusing on rather than just saying, oh, that one's the prettiest. First is the actual shape of each vehicle, regardless of the livery. Second will be the works team livery. And third will be a clear visual representation of the manufacturer's brand identity and a relationship to the design language used for their road cars, a key aspect of the LMDh design rules and one of the underlying points of going racing in modern times, to help improve and sell road vehicles. Just as a reminder, the views expressed here are solely my own, and I'm sure there will be parts or entire sections with which you, dear viewer, disagree. To that, I have but to say that the comments are open, and I welcome dissenting opinions, provided they are articulate and reasoned. Emotionally charged invective does no good and just gets you put on the naughty list. Anyway, let's get started. To begin, I want to make it abundantly clear that while the Porsche does hit the bottom of my ranking for the LMDh vehicles, it is not because I think it's an unattractive car, but rather an unremarkable one, especially compared to the other LMDh vehicles. The body looks very purposeful, very functional, but there's no élan, no real joie de vivre in the design. So, in that sense, there is a certain level of brand fidelity to the Porsche road cars, which do have a stately purity of engineering intent. Nevertheless, compared to the last Porsche prototype, the 919, it just doesn't feel as distinctively Porsche. There's no real punch, there's just a bit too much restraint. I also don't love the small dorsal fins on the roof here, which also show up in the Toyota hypercar. They look like someone missed spots with the clippers while giving the car a haircut. Unlike in this model, the real cars do have these fins color matched to the livery stripes, which helps somewhat, but they still stick out both literally and visually. I think Cadillac did a better job of integrating their roof fins into the aesthetics of the vehicle, and BMW and Acura managed to avoid them entirely. In fact, the only point of visual interest on the Porsche to me is the kink here in this rear stabilizing fin, which does nicely counterbalance the other curves of the car, but not sufficiently to make the whole design actively compelling. I also quite like the rear firing exhausts that hark back to the 918 road car and the 919 LMP1. By contrast, I love the liveries that they created for the factory-supported Penske Porsches, both this, the full season one, and the Le Mans Centenary, which looks like this. Both do a wonderful job of harking back to Porsche's historic liveries, obviously drawing most strongly from the Salzburg 917K in pretty much full red with white stripes that won the 1970 Le Mans race, but the Technicolor Dreamcoat of the Centenary livery seen here also recalls a number of other successful Porsche designs from Le Mans and further afield. I do think that the white striped livery of the number 6 looks better than the black striped livery of the number 7 and 5 cars, but both versions really help make the car look fast even when standing still, counterbalancing the smoothed front nose and lack of funky aero treatments that some of the others have. As far as fidelity goes to brand identity and design language, I suppose it tracks fairly well with Porsche's current model lineup, but most of the distinct elements that seem identifiable all track back to the Taycan, especially these lighting arrays here at the front with the horizontal headlamps and this rear light bar here. And for me, maybe it's just the disappointment that came from seeing the Taycan's production form after the beautiful futurism of the Mission E concept, but given the 963's lineage to the 918 road car and RS Spider, as well as Porsche's long history of prototypes, integrating more of that heritage into the vehicle design, in addition to the livery, would have really upped the visual interest factor as well as the sense of completeness. On the whole, I'd give the Porsche 963 a 6.5 out of 10 on aesthetics. Up next is Cadillac's V-Series.R. Cadillac definitely played their design a bit safe, and it looks a lot like an iterative improvement of last generation's DPI VR, which is decidedly not a bad thing. It still has the generally muscular appearance that one would expect, and seems an appropriate choice for a vehicle powered by a big, naturally aspirated American V8. Unlike the Porsche, the body shape of the Cadillac does lend itself to a fast sitting still look, particularly driven by the aggressive, almost arrow shape of the headlamps when viewed from the side, and how they seem to flow almost organically from the crease of the front quarter panel, and that curve then flows through to the end in the front canard and back side opening for the front wheel right here. Not sure exactly why this particular design trait works so well for me, but it really, really does. As mentioned previously, I think the Cadillac integrates the roof fins into the bodywork in a much less obtrusive fashion. Part of it seems to be the placement, part of it the fact that there's only one contiguous fin on each side, and part of it the slightly more seamless blending of the fins into the rest of the livery, not seen in this model. I have mixed feelings on the roof air intake. It's not as artfully designed into the bodywork relative to the Acura, but it does blend better than Porsches or BMWs, especially when viewed from the side. The rear canards also put me in mind of the flying buttresses that we saw on the mid-2010s Ford GT, and strike me as a very compelling way to approach rear airflow optimization, easily my favorite single design feature of the vehicle. Alternately, the taillights are the least remarkable part of the whole design, not because there's anything wrong with them per se, but they're pretty much just functional, whereas others made a real effort to do something interesting. I like the Cadillac liveries as well. See, this is the problem with doing this with just bullet points rather than a proper script. Again, they strike me as an inverted evolution of the two Chip Ganassi DPI vehicles that ran last year, but not in a bad way. I don't like them nearly as much as the DPI liveries. I'm especially missing the deep ruby color of last year's number 02 car, but the blue and red fronted liveries in particular work for the vehicle design, and I appreciate their tying in the colors and shapes of Cadillac's badging into the rear stabilizing fin and quarter panels. The yellow fronted livery I feel more agnostic on, but that's just a result of my own color preferences rather than any particular design sensibilities, as all three colors do tie into the colors of the Cadillac badge and work well to support the brand identity. As far as general integration of manufacturer-specific bodywork that keeps the design language of the current Cadillac road car lineup, I don't really see as strong a relationship as I initially thought. Some of the angularity and headlamp treatments, again with greater similarities to their electric offerings, are carried over, but even the V-Series Escalade or CT sedans have only tenuous similarities to the LMDh, with the only easily evident similarity around the lower front grills. The V-Series road cars even have more visually interesting tail lamps, which would have been a low-hanging fruit to improve a distinct visual lineage. I see more similarities to some of the Cadillac concept vehicles that they made throughout the 2000s, especially the CN for the similarity of its rear quarter panels to the aft canards of the V-Series.R, and the general aggressiveness of the Almirai, which I dearly wish Cadillac would have put into production. On the whole, I'll give the Cadillac a 7 out of 10. For those of you keeping score at home, the Acura's appearance at this point in the list does rather give away the winner, but we'll pretend that it doesn't for the sake of flow. To me, the ARX-06 is also an iterative improvement of the old ARX-05, and compared to the changes Cadillac made from DPI to LMDh, Acura seems to have just taken a chisel and sharpened up some of the edges of the ARX-05, streamlined a few others, and changed the engine and called it a day. This is by no means a bad thing. The ARX-05 was a fantastic looking vehicle that always seemed to me like the designer was kind of looking over at the F-22 Raptor designer's homework and changed it a bit so that it wouldn't be obvious that they copied. Apart from the rear quarters, the roof air intake, and the newly hidden / streamlined side view mirrors, I'm really struggling to find or identify, either in photographs, videos, or these excellent 3D models, any other significant differences from the 05 to the 06. When it comes down to it, though, I think the Acura design ethos can be distilled down to why mess with a good thing. The one area with substantial improvement over the ARX-05, to me, is in the taillight design, which definitely ties in better with some of their road cars. As far as livery considerations, I've chosen to look at the Wayne Taylor Racing number 10 livery over the Meyershank number 60 for two reasons. One, I like it better, and two, it was recently announced that Wayne Taylor Racing will be campaigning a second ARX-06 in 2024, to me bespeaking a closer partnership with Honda Performance Development, and therefore more of a justification in considering this the factory livery. The MSR livery of pink and white isn't bad, but I think the black and blue of Wayne Taylor Racing adds a nice touch of menace to the car that accentuates its many sharp angles and generally aggressive styling. A stealth gray livery with gold cockpit tinting would really take it to the next level, especially in drawing parallels to the F-22. If anyone's looking for a design project for Assetto Corsa, there you go. The general aggressiveness and angularity of the ARX-06 design I think is echoed in most of their current road car designs to some extent, and it had more than mere echoes in the outgoing NSX's general shape and some of their finer details. Both headlamps and tail lamps have clear lineage from their road-going designs, and there is just something in the overarching look of the car, kind of how it feels in person especially, that debadged and placed next to an Integra or MDX, the relationship between the cars would be clear. Overall, I give the ARX-06 an 8 out of 10. And perhaps surprisingly, for those of you who watched my guide to the 12 Hours of Sebring and remember my antipathy towards the M4 GT3 and GT4 and its oversized radiator grille / dental treatment, the winner is the BMW M Hybrid V8. Wider is a much better choice than taller for the kidney grille aesthetic, especially at the scales BMW is playing with these days, and the M Hybrids is an excellent use of a completely ownable brand asset without necessitating performance compromises that can be encountered when adjusting a design to fit a relatively spec chassis. Overall, I think the M Hybrid's front grille is a relatively subtle presentation for its size. It's well integrated into the front fascia in what I think is a fetching way, especially at night with the LED running lights illuminating the outline, which aren't shown on this model. The front quarters have a similarly compelling shape to the Cadillacs, unsurprisingly since they're both built on the Dallara chassis, but without the canards of the V Series.R, the aesthetics aren't quite there. Where the M Hybrid V8 really pulls ahead, in my mind, is the relative cleanliness of the design. World War II era dazzle camouflage-inspired livery notwithstanding, and the detail elements. Let's take a quick look at the livery, or the car with the livery removed, so we can see what I mean. After the kidney grille at the front and a bit of molding on the footbox here, the rest of the design is pretty much pared down to its base elements. A rectangular slab interrupted by wheel boxes, the driver's cockpit, and the requisite air intake, stabilizer fin, rear spoiler. Even the rear-firing exhausts here and here are really quite subtle. They're covered by aerodynamic fairings, and the design could, without its livery, almost be called understated, at least for a prototype racer. Frankly, though, I love the Team RLL livery too. Like Porsche's, it draws on the motorsports history of BMW's M division with its classic white base with blue and red accents. It isn't over-adorned by sponsorship logos, and although contrary to my normal tastes, the asymmetry of the design just works really, really well. I particularly appreciate that when viewed from the port side of the car at just the right angle, you can actually see the letter M splashed across the stabilizing fin and left rear quarter panel. And as previously mentioned, the whole asymmetry and general busyness of the livery design puts me in mind of some of those odd geometric patterns that they'd put on warships to try and confuse visual sighting techniques and optical rangefinders. Maybe they were concerned about any lurking Lola T70 Mark IIIBs hiding around a track with their headlamp-concealed torpedo tubes. And, of course, BMW has this massive kidney grille that, when talking about bringing a brand's design language to life in a race car, is a unique feature that says, without a shadow of a doubt, I am a BMW. This is the thing that really tipped the scales in BMW's favor for me from a scoring perspective. Between the kidney grille and the heritage-inspired livery, I suspect, having not collected any sort of empirical data, that one could show the M Hybrid to anyone with a vague knowledge of current automotive design trends without any other context or badging, and they would have no difficulty identifying it as a BMW. For this, I give the BMW an 8.5 out of 10. It ranks slightly lower in terms of absolute body shape than the Acura, but the livery and the brand fidelity really put it over the top for me.
So, that's my entirely opinionated and in no way authoritative ranking of the 4 current LMDh cars. We'll see how next year's newcomers land in this ranking after they're revealed and I have a chance to see them in the flesh at Daytona or Sebring. Thoughts and debate welcome in the comments below, and as for today's call to action not featuring the 3 sacred words of YouTube,
Like, comment, subscribe.
We had a recent kerfuffle in our community about a developer trying to pass a poorly written and shady proposal for low-quality housing through our Board of County Commissioners, and the main reason it wasn't rubber-stamped by the county was due to the action of some locals who spread the word about the proposal and pointed out the numerous errors, exceptions, and downright falsehoods in the submission. If you have the time, why not take a look at what's going on at the next meeting of your Board of County Commissioners, and if you find something that doesn't feel right, or even that just piques your interest, take the time to attend the meeting and ask questions. Not for any political cause or ulterior motive, but just to get involved in the community and know what's going on around you. We could all do to be a little more locally minded these days. Have a good evening, everyone.